Welcome to the only Danish podcast about pro wrestling. Normally, I do a long tease of everything, talking about championships and so on, but I think actually we have something a little bit more important to talk about, but just in a few seconds. So, I'm sitting here with the current Bodyslam women's champion and also the Frank Andersson Nordic wrestling champion. But I have this tagline that I use just before we dive into the interview. So, Aliss Ink, every wrestler has a story to tell. Are you ready to tell yours?
Absolutely.
And it's a really pleasure having you here on the podcast. But before, I have made a long list of subjects that I want to talk with you about, but something came in just from the side. So let's dive into one thing. I want to start to congratulate you with the current PWI ratings. So let's talk a little bit about that first.
Oh, absolutely, we can do that. But first of all, thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this interview. I mean, we know we tried to arrange it a few times and it just never worked out. So I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah,
But yes,
communication can be quite difficult sometimes, actually.
it really can be, especially over the internet as it
Yeah,
is. But
exactly.
no, the PWI, obviously a huge honor. So I actually listed last year as well for the women's 250. I think I ranked 70 on that one. This year I'm on 88, but I also ranked for the PWI 500, which is generally considered the men's division or like the main belts of promotions, and the women's one is for women's for the women's division separately. So that's actually really cool to rank in both lists. It's not a lot of females on the 500, so it's actually quite a big deal. So it's really fun. But uh, I don't know how much people know about PWI, but it is a ranking that comes out every year from Pro Wrestling Illustrated, and it takes different things into consideration. It's not necessarily that these are the best wrestlers, but it is a part of it. Obviously, in ring skill and presentation and so on does count on the list, but it also takes wins and losses into consideration, and also how many matches you actually go per year. So it's a minimum of the amount of matches you can have to actually rank and so on. So it's a bit of an interesting list because it takes some aspects maybe that we as wrestlers consider more important and other aspects that the audience might consider more important, and they kind of blend them together. Uh, but obviously, ranking is still, especially in the US, is quite a big deal actually. But also, it is an honor, and to represent the Nordics, which is not usually the area that the PWI is looking at. That's super cool.
But I think we have moved their looking glass towards the Nordic because of what we're going to talk about today, your journey towards where you are now, and also a lot of other female wrestlers as well. Because today we're not going to talk about the male wrestlers; they're good at making themselves known. I think it's more important to talk about that the female division in the Nordics as well are growing. We have this
Yes, finally.
yeah, finally, because I think more or less you have kicked so many men's asses, now it's important that you have some females as well. But I think, Alice, if you look at the females division, we have Madison Marley in Denmark, we have you in Sweden, we have Regina in Finland. So we have some female wrestlers that are coming up now, being something and meaning something. So, but it's also one of the problems with the females division. There are not so many female wrestlers out there, so
No,
we need
exactly,
more.
and exactly that. And it's partly because of representation, obviously. You want to have a diverse product in wrestling, and you need to have females on the card, right? And you want to source that partly locally. That's a deal. That's one of the problems you have as a promoter, possibly when it comes to creating a female division. But it's also it's so many things with this because especially coming up and working or coming up training with guys, which most of us, since we're not that many women, most places around the Nordics have to do. Nothing bad with that whatsoever. That's great, but it also doesn't always mimic the way we're actually booked. Obviously, I do a lot of intergender matches. I think that's such a nice story to tell in the ring. It's so much fun with that. So I do enjoy that part of wrestling, but that's not always what the promoter is looking for. They might want to book you for the women's roster, or they might want to book you for the female match on the card. Hopefully, it's going to be more than one, but unfortunately, still, that's a lot of promotions. This is still the one spot for women. I'm aiming to change that. Hopefully sometime soon. But it's this is the thing. If you only train with men and then you go on to promotions, different places, you booked against female, and it is different. You work differently if you're two females, if you're an intergender match, because you have to. Because physically, even if you can do a lot of the same things, the positioning might not be exactly the same, or like the body weight is positioned differently on the body, and it is a little bit different to work. And to realize that in front of a live audience that's a hard pill to swallow sometimes. And I've been there as well. That's why I know it's important to get more women in so we can help grow the division together and we can get better from it. And that's going to give more diversity as well to the way we work with each other.
Yeah, because I think actually now we're going in a totally different direction than I planned, but I think this is much more important to talk about actually, because I think actually the promoters, my feeling is that the promoters here in Denmark, Sweden, Finland, Norway as well, wants to book female wrestlers, but there's a big gap that there is any to book. So hopefully this interview can help them motivate the female wrestlers to go in and start training in Stockholm, Copenhagen, Aarhus as
Fingers
well.
crossed. Yes.
Yeah. So Aliss, before we dive into your background, I think actually now is probably the right time to tell if there is someone, female wrestlers listening in Sweden or around Stockholm or anywhere, where could they start to train wrestling?
Well, if you're anywhere near the Stockholm area, Steel Tracks is the place to go. That's steel as the metal, obviously, and then tracks with an X at the end. And you can find the training facilities on social media as well if you Google it. It is actually at this point the only place to train wrestling around that part of Sweden. I'm one of the coaches and also one of the founders of the training facilities. So very happy to see more women step into the door. That would be amazing. We have a really good group as well, and it's so many new talents coming up. We actually have a girl training as well, or two even, but they're quite early on the journey still. So it's going to take a little bit more maturing in the ring to do, I think, before they're ready to start going the big matches. But we're getting there. But we need more. I would love to see the possibility of actually having proper women's shows in Sweden as well. But right now, we're just not enough local talent for that.
But I think the dream could be that we, even though we have a Scandi Grabs where you have participated numerous of times, we could have a female Scandi Grabs as well. That should actually be the goal for the female division here in Scandinavia, I think.
That would be super cool. I mean, obviously, Bodyslam have their annual women's show, which, as far as I know, drew full crowds every time they do it. And that is obviously they bring in a lot of people from Scandinavia and from the Nordics as well. But yes, the Scandinavians, like having a tournament format for that would be super cool.
I think actually you should talk to Christian or Søren to convince them that they have to cultivate a little bit more in Aarhus, bringing in some female wrestlers, because I'm not seeing so many from the part of Aarhus. So yeah,
that's also very true. Actually, it's a really good idea, and I think one of the reasons why a lot of promotions is maybe not focusing quite so much on the female division as well is because it's expensive. If you only have like one or two local, or like one local maybe, and then some semi-locals, that's not too far off. but it costs a lot of money to bring people from overseas and to fill up a proper roster. So that is obviously also a thing. But the more women we get, and I'm not saying that people should lower their fees. That is definitely not what I'm saying here. But if there are more people that is homegrown, obviously that's also going to create more opportunities, because it is going to be easier to do those kind of shows, and because there is an audience for it. Just look at what people are searching on YouTube as well. It's like any promotion. I can guarantee you, if you go up and look at what matches is going to draw the most audience, it is not going to be the main event matches for the heavyweight guys. I'm sorry, they're great athletes in most cases, but that's not what's going to draw the crowd. It is the women's matches, because that is something that other people want to see.
Yeah, and I think one of the things regarding when we're talking about female wrestlers coming up, we have these amazing athletes in WWE and AEW as well, and also in the independent scene as well. We have Rhea Ripley, who is probably one of the top wrestlers at the moment.
Absolutely.
She's
Hands down,
representing.
she's amazing.
Yeah, she's amazing. Actually, I saw her actually live some years ago in LA, and she's out of this world. And that journey could be the next one coming in Stockholm, Aarhus, Copenhagen, or anywhere. So it's so much important for me as well to give our listeners an insight into also the challenges that there will be for female wrestlers, and why it's not a so big thing in Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Finland as well. So hopefully we could change something about that in the future. So
Exactly.
So this was a little bit of a detour actually regarding what I was actually hoping that we were going to talk about. But that's also the charm sometimes, that something just comes up and then you just follow that path instead of just saying, I have to talk about this, I have to talk about this, or else the interview will go haywall or something like that. But Aliss, for me, it's also important that our listeners knows who you are. So could you take us a little way back to maybe not when you were a little girl, but your background story? Who was Aliss Ink before wrestling?
Wasn't it like, I mean, wasn't it Tom Sawyer to start? I was born, I grew up, right? That's a perfect place. That's the sentence to begin with, right?
Yeah, exactly. It sounds quite familiar.
It does, doesn't it? I think it might have been Tom. I'm not entirely sure, but it's just a famous line.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I actually I did not grow up watching wrestling whatsoever. It was not available on the channels we had at home. It was nothing that was ever a part of anyone I knew's upbringing, to be honest. Obviously, there were some channels in Sweden as well that was airing, or where you could watch WWE products, I think, or maybe it was WCW, possibly. But it was nothing that was available where I grew up in my household, so to speak. So that was never something I ever considered. I, on the other hand, always wanted to be a stuntwoman. That was one of my dreams growing up. I was absolute Star Wars fan. I tried to do like lightsaber fights out in the grass in the backyard. I love Jackie Chan, and Bruce Lee, and like growing up and watching some of like these old time classic, or now they're classic, martial arts movies, and seeing what they did, and like, oh wow, that's super cool. And I got into martial arts, kind of through a curveball as well. But I started out with Aikido, which is obviously not one of the more intense ones. It's more like a performance art kind of martial arts style thing. But it's I did that for a bit in my very early teenage years. Then I transitioned into other martial arts. I did boxing for a while. Then I got into karate, jiu-jitsu, and kickboxing. And the latter three being my main sports, so to speak, for a lot of my adult life. So I did that for a long time. Just martial arts, trying things out. Tried some competing as well. Not a lot, but I did actually traveled to some bigger competitions around Europe as well to test it out. Not with any great success, but still was there, tried it out.
So
So
was that your dream at first, Alice, succeeding in doing something within martial arts, being a pro there, or?
I think I was interested in more like perfecting the craft. I'm going to do like UFC competitions and that kind of like the big league, so to speak, was never anything I aimed for. But I like the training and I like the grind. And I mean, I was in the dojo, but I was doing it at the most. I mean, maybe 5-6 times a week, and on top of that, did strength training. On top of that, did cardio. So it's like I just wanted to perfect it, and I wanted to have like the legitimacy, I guess, from my other martial arts friends. It's like, okay, I can actually do this. Um, and it's also like, because I mean, growing up, being maybe a bit of a troubled teen at times, that was also something that was very important for me to be able to feel like I can actually do this and I can be strong in myself.
So was it a good way to gain self-control?
I reckon so. And I also actually think I needed a discipline. I think, I mean, I'm not going to talk bad about my parents. They're lovely people. But I don't think they were very good at handling me. Uh, so I think I needed someone to actually sit me down and tell me, no, you're actually going to take this seriously. You're actually going to listen to what I say. So the environment in the dojo, the hierarchy and everything, it was perfect for me at the time. Uh, and obviously, some of my best friends to this day is from that martial arts world.
So the transition from having a lot of interest into martial art and then wrestling. How?
Yes. Well, it's so I went to a couple local shows, Stockholm wrestling shows with a martial arts friend actually. Um, and we had a good time. All right, this is cool. And we were kind of joking about, yeah, you could probably do that, right? Yeah, doesn't look that hard, right? But didn't think much more of it. I mean, that was never in my wheelhouse of things I would thought I could or wanted or should do. Um, but she actually got back to me. We kind of lost touch for a bit, and then she got back to me like, do you know the wrestling thing? Would you like to come with me and test it out a bit? And I was like, yeah, all right, sounds fun. Why not? I'm all for a challenge. Let's do that. Um, so she brought me to a training place. She signed me up and everything, and I thought it was just like one of these things you can try it out for a day. Like, yeah, fun activity, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I get there, and the first thing they tell me is, right, I hope you guys are ready. This is going to be a tryout. We're going to be here for about 5 hours. Make sure you stay hydrated. And I was like, what? What did you say? Did you sign me up for 5 hours for tryout? So, but yeah, it was so much fun, and I've never looked back.
Yeah, and
And
here
that's the
we are
thing.
today. Yeah.
Exactly. It's like I got a call back. It's like a couple of days after. It's like, yeah, we think you would be perfect for this. Do you wanna actually start the term? And yeah, I had to make it work somehow, so I did.
So how, being at this tryout and start some serious wrestling training, how could you use your knowledge of different types of martial arts going into the more serious wrestling
I mean,
training?
I had so much just for free from my background, honestly. Like taking the falls, taking the tumbles, the rolls, and everything like that. It's obviously slight differences to how you do it in wrestling to martial arts, but it's a lot of it is very similar with those things. Just taking care of your own body, kind of thing. Also with the strikes, it's at least the kicks. The way of doing them for wrestling is quite similar to how you do it in martial arts in, like, for example, a sparring setting. uh, while the strikes was kind of hard to adapt, and also not keeping the guard up. That was the absolute worst. As soon as someone comes at you, in martial arts, you block it. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. You bring the arms up, you make sure you protect your face, like chin down, and wrestling is obviously you open up very differently. So that took a while to kind of adapt to. But also a lot of the throws as well. Like I said, I did jiu-jitsu. Like throwing someone in a wrestling ring and throwing someone on a floor with a mat on is actually, the wrestling ring doesn't feel so intimidating anymore. But it's
Nice.
but I do also have to say that wrestling is absolutely the hardest activity I've ever done. So even if I had a lot of things for free, it does not mean that everything after was easy. So it's obviously so much else to have to think about. But I mean, a lot of the beginner stuff that people have to like spend time grinding down, I had that just from the get-go. But then the next layer, actually converting what I knew and how I move in the ring and so on into something that works in the wrestling ring for an audience, that was different and super, super hard.
Yeah, I could understand that. But Alice, how did all this training start to shape you as a pro wrestler, knowing in which direction do you want to go character wise and so on?
So I started training in 2018, and I believe that was about the same time when Ronda Rousey got into WWE. And obviously, everyone was looking at me as like, "Great, we have our own Ronda Rousey, perfect." So I didn't really get much of a choice, to be honest, in how I was going to get presented. Because it's like, all right, cool, tattooed, kick-ass martial artist, female, perfect. You're checking the boxes here. So that was kind of how I was presented as first as well. I think my first match as Aliss Ink, I went in with my tie shorts and like a martial arts style top part, and then it's like, yeah, just going in and kicking someone in the head. That was my introduction to the Stockholm wrestling scene at the time. That's the first thing I did, just kick the head off a manager and walked out, basically.
Oh,
Uh,
hot start then.
Definitely got the pop of the night for sure. But yeah, it's
Okay.
kind of rolled from there. But obviously the character has evolved since then. I mean, Aliss Ink then is not the same Aliss Ink that you would see now. Now I mean, the dragon persona kind of grew from that, and it's obviously still very martial arts heavy. I mean, I'm always trying to stay true to that kind of baseline that I have, and that's very convenient for me as well to lean into.
Mm.
Uh, but it's gaining other layers, which is kind of hard when you have a very, if you look at like wrestling history, like a lot of the martial arts or gimmicks, they have a top, they have a ceiling, and they don't go above it because there is something there, and you kind of like, you can't play too much with it without losing the integrity. And that's the hard part. Uh,
I could remember one of the worst ever gimmicks regarding martial arts. I don't know if you can remember him. Glacier from way, way back when. That's probably the worst ever. The
yes, exactly.
picture
Because
perfect, worst example of how to integrate martial arts into pro wrestling.
I mean, you say you remember, but I didn't actually watch it. Was when it was you know when it was actually going on. But then again, I have watched it after that because I mean, obviously, since starting wrestling, I do watch a lot of wrestling from all the eras. I try to like catch up on everything that I missed the 20 years prior when I was just doing martial arts. So so that's obviously a thing. So I do know who Glacier is, and yes, I totally agree with it. It's a terrible example. Well, it's a great example, but it's a
Yes.
terrible gimmick.
Yeah, it's a great example of what not to do.
Absolutely.
Because I think actually you're talking about the fine line between making it credible and not too cartoonish. Because Glacier
Yes.
was a cartoon character, and you're a little bit in between, still something like with the dragon, all the tattoos, scary and so on, but still credible because you are this character in more
Oh,
ways because of the background and so on. So
exactly. The character is not that far from me, and I don't think the best character comes from somewhere within. That's what everyone says, right? And I mean,
exactly.
every time I walk out into the ring, my mindset, regardless of anything else, is still gonna be, I'm gonna kick the head of the person. That is always going to be when I look at the person in the wrestling ring. Okay, I know I'm going to have a match. Nothing else matters, but my mindset is I'm going to kick the head of that person, and
Oh.
that's how I talk myself into being what I am in the ring.
Yeah, and when you're talking about kicking the head in, one thing that comes to my mind is Bryan Danielson, because he said every time I must be think about what I'm going to say now, but he says I'm going to kick his head in. So something like that. If you have that type of mindset going into a match, you're more or less going to be more credible, because you don't have to say something like I'm going to kick your head in or kick your head off or something like that, but character-wise, it gives you something of a purpose.
No, exactly. And if you don't believe it, why would anyone else?
Yeah. The first thing, if you're going to build a credible character, believe it yourself, be the character yourself. And
Exactly.
so Aliss, going into the training and so on, how long was the period from you coming in to start training serious wrestling and having your first match? And I must say, the first match that I've stated is only from cage match, so probably maybe you have some dark matches before that.
No, I actually think it was about half a year in,
Yeah.
and I was because this is the thing as well. Because when I started training, this was the first time this was done by Stockholm Wrestling, because they had their own training facility at the time, and they actually decided we're going to have a group, we're going to have the same group doing like the same curriculum for half a year before anyone gets a match, and then we're going to offer everyone that has potential is going to be able to do a debut on a smaller show. So that was actually a very structured and well laid out plan. And it was the first time it was done, because before that they had kind of like dropping in, dropping out, as it is in a lot of smaller promotions when you have the training facilities. And that was obviously very successful. I mean, I came out of that, also some other people in the Stockholm area, like the Beast from the East as well. One of the people that came out of that training group, Philip Racine. So it is some people that's actually still active, maybe more locally than I am, but that came out and still continued to do this today. So the drop-off rate was still quite high, but much lower than it usually is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but I
sorry.
think a lot of I think people, when they come and start wrestling, they do not really know what it takes to be a pro wrestler. It's
Oh,
damn hard
definitely
work
not.
and a damn whole lot of bumps.
It is, and I think it is a shock, I think, for everyone coming into it, unless they've been watching wrestling and studying wrestling beforehand, because some people do. Obviously, we get this. I mean, there's an amount of super fans coming in, obviously, that knows everything about wrestling before taking the first bump, and still not everyone's able to make it.
No,
So
exactly.
I'd say, I mean, it takes its toll, and you have to be prepared. And obviously, good backgrounds to have is people that's been doing like martial arts or maybe American football or other types of other types of very physical sports. You do have an advantage coming into this because your body's already used to taking the hits. On the other hand, you might come in with previous injuries and so on and so forth instead. So it's obviously a bit of a balance here.
Yeah.
But it is especially the neck, obviously with the bumps, like having the right build for taking the falls in wrestling is it takes time to build up, and that's where I'd say most people drop out because they realize they're not doing this, and it's not as fun when you wake up, not just the morning after, but maybe 2-3 days after, and you're still having pain in your neck.
Exactly.
It is part of it. It is something you have to go through.
But Alice, let's go back to your first match. Could you tell us a little bit about the story behind it and how you prepare
Absolutely. I'm so
yourself?
sorry. I'm sidetracking you all the time.
No. But I'll be the driver trying to get us into the main road. So don't worry about that.
See, this is why I don't have a driving license.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, first match was actually as under another name. It was called Eskatana, I believe.
Yeah.
Um, It was a tag match, which is a good introduction. I was tagging with Endikara for could maybe say like a promotion within the Stockholm wrestling universe, but a separate kind of booking promotion called See It Live Wrestling. And I was working against Marcus Oman and I believe Bolmangler Beck, I think. And it was it was it was a nice rite of passage. Obviously because the people I was fighting against were my coaches at the time. And obviously also having Endikara by your side is, is a treat.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I mean, everything he's gone on to doing afterwards as well. So it's like he has a great career both behind him already and definitely ahead of him. So that's a very cool a cool way of starting out in the business, I'd say. But I don't think it was a lot of story leading up to it. Apart from that, this was kind of a training show, so to speak. We had a lot of firsts on the show. I think the match went quite well, though, as far as I remember. But I was obviously super nervous, despite it being a smaller crowd than what I've experienced after.
And going on from there, your first match, developing your style of wrestling and so on, how was that journey?
I mean, this is the thing. When you train half a year, you're not ready to go a match. I don't think anyone's ever going to be ready to go a match after half the year. So it was obviously looking back at it. I haven't seen that match in ages, but I'm pretty sure I would cringe. I would cringe something crazy about watching it. So it's obviously a lot of small details and things. I was obviously, but I had still so much from the martial arts that I can just use in this and just add on the things like the play with the ropes, like the cross bodies and the jumps and everything like that. I think I did some of that in that match as well, if I remember correctly. So it's I could utilize some of the wrestling aspects of things, but obviously looking back and seeing the timing of things and seeing the connection with the audience might not be there completely, but like the way I would present it now, so to speak. Then again, we have the best audiences in the world in the Nordics, so it's quite easy to work to get that connection. But it's also something that it is a craft. It is a craft, and it's something that needs to be worked on a lot. Those
Yeah.
specific aspects.
I think, Alice, actually, I've written a little bit about your key matches and so on, but I think we should wait a little bit with that subject, because I think we should take them instead of when we talk about the Danish connection, the Japanese connection, because you have met a lot of interesting stars and some talents as well. So if you could, now we're talking about developing character and so on, but your finisher is also a very important part of a wrestler's identity. How did you develop yours, and how did you found out what you were going to call it?
Oh, okay. This is an interesting one. So I've actually had basically the same finisher since I started, and it is obviously extremely connected to my martial arts background. It is a roundhouse kick, like a very based, vicious roundhouse kick. Like I said, the first thing I did walking into Stockholm wrestling was kick someone's head off. That was with that kick, and that kind of stayed on to be my finisher for up until this day and age. In some promotions, I worked other types of finishes as well, and obviously some matches have other finishes. Some are submissions and so on, but that stayed fairly constant, and specifically in the Nordics. But it is how that came to be my finisher was, I think, honestly, I think I just did it at some point in a training, and everyone's like, "All right, that's your finisher now. It can't be anything else," and it fits the gimmick. I'm very comfortable with that type of movement as well. So that's about it, really. And then it's been called a bit different things, I think, in different promotions as well, depending on the commentators. I think Dragon's Whip is the most used one, which I think is quite nice.
Yeah.
Obviously, I wasn't called the Dragon when I started out. That came later. So
Yeah, and when did that name come about, the Scandinavian Dragon? Because you are
I
actually from Sweden, so
I am.
yeah.
But I'm thinking like this though, because I've obviously wrestled all over Scandinavia at this point. And I mean, I think I've actually done more matches in Denmark than I have in Sweden at this point as well, which is quite cool. But I kind of feel like I represent the scene because I go out to different places, and I don't just represent Sweden. I represent the entire area, the Nordic scene, the Scandinavian scene, and Scandinavian Dragon was kind of it was a good name to have, I felt. But it started out being just the dragon. But obviously, there's loads of dragons in wrestling. You have the American dragon as well, as you were talking about before. So it's like uh, it's not, you need to have something more than just the dragon.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
that actually came from, I think, from a poster. I think it was Stockholm Wrestling using it first.
Mm.
And it wasn't actually my own idea. I was kind of like, I felt it was a little bit generic maybe at first, and then it's like, no, actually I quite like it. I mean, I do have loads of dragon tattoos. I've been fascinated with dragons as a mythical creature since I was a kid.
Yeah,
I have a huge dragon tattoo on my back, so it's like, all right, it kind of makes sense. Why not be the Scandinavian dragon?
yeah.
And that's what it became.
Because as we were talking about before, as a wrestler, your identity as a wrestler is a part of you, and if you have that tattoo, it gives totally sense that you're called that.
It does. And also it's like I think I also think, and I really believe that, and that's maybe not something I got from the get-go, but I do think that now, that wrestling is about fire. And what's a better epiphany of fire than a dragon?
Yeah, exactly. The most dangerous creature, actually.
I mean, potentially. Depends
Yeah,
on what type of mythology you're looking at, obviously, but
exactly, exactly.
yeah. But it's also obviously the connection, the girl with the dragon tattoo. I've been hearing that a couple times as well, people joking about it, because obviously a Swedish book, but
You have? Whoa. Wow, I couldn't really
no,
understand that people were.
it's not a gimmick I would push. So
No,
if I
no,
say
I
that,
couldn't. A little bit cringe, actually, maybe. Yeah.
slightly,
So,
slightly.
you had teased a little bit about you wrestled more matches in Denmark than in Sweden. So, I would like to talk a little bit about the Danish connection.
Yeah,
Bodyslam, Nordic Elite Wrestling. How did your
absolutely.
first match at Bodyslam come about?
So my first match with Bodyslam was actually, I believe, pre-pandemic. It was against Marcus of Man. We did an intergender match. I think it was at Absalom, if I'm not misremembering. And that was my introduction to the Bodyslam universe. First booking. No, actually, it wasn't. Sorry, I was booked for a women's show before that.
Mm.
Um, like I think the Bodyslam's first women's show I was on. I did a quite short match against the only Dane on the card, actually, Elena Morgenstern. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Sorry if I
Yeah, I
don't.
think it's good. It's good. It's good.
Uh, but yes, that was actually the first time in Bodyslam. But I was very green at the time. I think that might have been my fourth or fifth match or something like that. Like as a whole, fourth or fifth match. So
Mm. Whoa.
yeah, extremely early. And then it took a while, and then I got called back for this intergender match, which was really really fun night. I still to this day I do like watching that match because I think we had a lot of fun with it. So and that's after that I think pandemic hit. Not
Mm.
too long after that actually. Obviously everything kind of died down for a while, all over the scene. And I got a call back for the next Scandigraps just after the pandemic in 2021. And basically with that one, it's Bodyslam strapping a rocket to my back and just, I mean, what do? You just ride with it, right? because that opened so many doors for me. I'll be forever grateful for that one.
Yeah, but I think also it's a good thing that they took a chance doing that and have the courage to do something that they were strapping the rocket on Aliss Ink because they saw something
Absolutely.
unique in you.
I mean, I completely honestly, I did not think I was ready. I was really, really scared to not live up to expectations. Honestly, more than anything else. So, because as you're saying, they took a chance. I was fairly new. It's just coming out of a pandemic. We had no training place in Stockholm either at this time, which means the few and far in between trainings we did was on basically on pieces of grass or mats in a dojo somewhere.
Oh.
So everything felt a little bit shaky, and a little bit rough. But I think that was my second show after kind of like the pandemic started to light up. It was still a little bit there, 2021, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was that night was absolutely magical. I would say key matches, that finale, definitely. And obviously against one of my favorite opponents as well, Carlos Zamora. So could not be happy with that.
Yeah. Carlos is an amazing wrestler, and
Definitely.
But it's a good way that you gave him a little bit of lesson in wrestling. But
I'd love to give Carlos Zamora lessons. So
yeah.
anytime.
But Aliss, one thing that they strapped a rocket to your back, but I think it's quite amazing to see them making more or less the first all-female women's championship belts, and you more or less owning that belt.
I mean, I was actually looking at that a couple of days ago, and I've had it now for over 770 days, something. So it was a bit more than 2 years. But I was not the first champion, though. I was the second one, but I've been keeping it since.
Yeah, you're actually the Roman Reigns of Bodyslam, more or
Of the
less.
Bodyslam women's division, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Because we don't have that many female wrestlers, and that's a shame. That's so dominant. They're switching the belts more. They should actually have kept it on Rhea Ripley, if you ask me, for a very, very long time. But
I agree, actually. But it's when she will get back. I'm absolutely certain.
She has to, if you ask me.
Oh yeah, definitely. When she gets it back, she's gonna keep it for a while, I think. Hopefully she stays injury free. That's also a thing, obviously.
Yeah, but having that belt for so long and trying to define the Bodyslam's women's division, how do you carry that burden on your back? Because it's a huge burden and a huge honor to have that belt for so long.
Yes, I wouldn't call it a burden. I would call it an honor, and I would call it a responsibility.
Yeah.
But it is absolutely amazing because it's still like it's. I mean, obviously, belts in wrestling is it is a storytelling device, maybe more than anything else. But it is also someone is actually putting faith in you to carry that belt and carry their product and representing that, and that is an absolute honor, and that's something I carry with me not only in wrestling. It's actually people believing in me and wanting to see me succeed and know that I can show someone else's product in a good light, and I will try to do that to my best of my abilities always. So yeah, and that's obviously I had that belt for a long time. I had so many good opponents challenging for it. It's also a thing. I mean, a belt is nothing if it's not defended. And being able to do that against some of the top women in the world, I'd say. I mean, a lot of people going on to do big things that I've actually had with me in the ring, working for that belt. That is an amazing feeling.
So if we have to look a little bit into the future, Bodyslam has this huge show next year, 8th of February in Copenhagen. I think it's called, if you say Poolen in Danish, or something like that. Huge show, over 2,000 tickets not sold yet, but hopefully will be sold out. Hopefully, fingers crossed for that, because we need some huge success for oh my words, a huge success for Danish pro wrestling and Scandinavian wrestling as well, because
I think it has the potential to
yeah,
definitely sell out. I
yeah.
mean, I have high hopes for this one, and it's gonna be an amazing evening. I'm absolutely 100% certain.
So I have to ask you, who is your dream opponent for that show? If you could choose anybody.
Oh my,
Yes.
that is such a hard question. I mean, dream opponent. If I could pick anyone in the world to work with right now, and I'm not saying this is very likely to happen, I would like to work Meiko Satomura before she
Oh,
retires. That would definitely be a dream match. But I also think she's extremely busy and probably not the cheapest person to get over to Denmark. So, but yeah, that would be a dream match right at this point.
hmm. So if now we have talked about dream matches, who do you think is more will be more realistic? I
Uh,
know it's not two hard questions. I know, sorry, but
it is no. It's no worries, no worries. I mean, of the
yeah.
people that I know is gonna be at the show, because there's probably people that is gonna be there on the card that I don't know about yet. Everyone's obviously not announced. I mean, working with Oku
Oh,
would be super cool. I've actually been in the ring with him once and in a rumble, and I did not get a chance to work with him, and it's still annoying to me that I didn't get a chance to, because he's amazing.
but do
So
you
that would
think
obviously be super cool.
he could bring Amira as well with him, maybe this time around?
It's a good point. Good point.
Yeah, I saw
Uh,
actually that she is more active now than she has been for quite a while on the British wrestling scene. So
that's a good point. But she's more manager usually, right?
yeah, she is more
Yeah, yeah.
manager. I saw her one time at the Road Pro show last year in London, but I've seen I follow her on Instagram and so on. She's been more active at wrestling.
Oh,
So,
okay.
so
That's super cool.
yeah,
Uh,
you could
yeah,
kick
I
both
mean,
Michael Oko and his manager as well.
there you go. Maybe a mixed tag. Me and
Yeah,
Carlos
yeah.
team up against against Uko and his girlfriend. That would be perfect.
Or maybe you could bring your first ever opponent, Marcus of Man. So you have
That
this.
would also be
Yeah,
super cool. Yes.
yeah, actually.
Yeah, I mean, Marcus obviously works for Bodyslam now and then as well, but he's also
Yeah.
done commentary.
Oh.
So it's been a bit of a jack of all trades.
But yeah, but it could actually work. But we're now helping Christian a little bit booking that show. So if he's
I'm
listening,
sure Christian will just turn a deaf eye to this, because or ear, sorry. He probably has so many ideas for this already.
yeah, yes. So now we're talked about Body Slam, but there's another promotion that I know is close to your heart as well, Nordic Elite Wrestling.
Oh, definitely. I mean, the crossovers between these two is obviously huge as well. A lot of the same people, amazing people work in both promotions. Not everyone, but a lot. But yes, Nordic Elite Wrestling is also obviously coming down from like the biggest show in Denmark up to this date with Amabio, right? Is that
Yes,
correct?
yes, it's a hard
Yes.
name to pronounce if you're up.
I had to think for a second there, but
Yeah.
yeah, and that was obviously so cool to be on that show, and I'm so grateful to be able to get a match there as well. But Jessica Love has been one of the opponents that I've always wanted to face. So yeah, it's it's a super cool experience. You should see the Danish wrestling scene growing, and I say this a lot of times in podcasts. It's like um, wrestling in Scandinavia is kind of buzzing right now. It is growing. It's an interest from different places, and Denmark is definitely at the forefront.
Yeah.
You can feel that in the audience as well. It's this type of entertainment. There's a place for it, and I think it's very it fits very well with the Danish mentality as well. You just want to have fun. You just want to engulf yourself in like the spectacle and just be a part of what's going on. And I think it's an amazing thing.
But
Because I mean, I work for crowds that is very different to that as well. And it's obviously as a wrestler, just getting that energy from the crowd, it gives so much extra to everything that you're doing.
exactly. But I think actually the more charming thing, I don't know much about the Swedish scene, or not that much. Actually, the most charming thing about the Danish scene is that you have a very small group of very nerdy people who knows a lot about wrestling, and then there's a huge part coming to the shows that's casual fans coming for the entertainment.
Yes. And I think that's a common denominator in all of Scandinavia and the Nordics. Actually, it's a few people that is actually following the product more as a traditional wrestling fan would, and then other people just coming there because this is going to be a good night. This is going to be stuff going down. It's things happening, the cool stuff happening, like acrobatic things in the ring, but also the storytelling and the characters that draw you in. And wrestling really has something for everyone. I mean, I've had a friend went to the first time to a wrestling show. Nothing she ever thought she would want to watch or do, but she came along anyway, and she was like, "This is the best thing ever. It is like it's like one of these soap operas, but live, but with action. And why have I never seen this before?" So it's even for the people that maybe not thinking that this is for them. I'd say they have to give it a shot because wrestling is really it might not be the finer cultural things. It's not an opera, but it's definitely cultural and it's definitely performance art that it should not be ignored or looked down on because it's damn hard and it's damn entertaining.
Exactly, but it's also a warning to new wrestling fans. Actually, once they've been to a wrestling show, they're going to be hooked. So
That
we
is
should
also
actually
true. That's also true.
we should put out a warning here because we have to be realistic. We have to be totally subjective and neutral about it. So we
Should have a plaque on it saying it's
yeah,
addictive.
warning
Yeah.
sign down here going
Yes.
warning, warning. We're talking about something that you might actually think is funny. So going forward. So Alice, now we're talking about Denmark, but another part of the way your development to go to be to where you are today as a wrestler. You're traveled around the globe, but one place that probably a lot of people know about was also a huge, huge wrestling country. We talked about the Danish connection. Now we're going all the way around the globe to the other part of the world, to Japan, the Japanese connection, Stardom especially. How did that come
Yes.
about? And
Well, I mean, for me, it came a little bit out of the blue, actually. I was looking at the Japanese scene quite early on when I started wrestling, because that was obviously it was something very compelling to me, the way Japanese wrestling looks and how they tell that story. Obviously, being a fan of stunt work and also being a fan of martial arts movies and also of anime, that is very compelling, and there's so many parallels to Japanese wrestling style. But that was something I was hoping to do at one point, but it was nothing I thought I was ready to do, and I did not seek out any promotions in Japan at the point I actually got contacted. So that came really from the sidelines. I got an email dropping in from Stardom, and it's like,
okay.
"Oh, do you want to come here and wrestle for a couple of months?" And I was like, "Is this real? Is this real? What? What's going on?" But it's kind of a combination of some connections I made in Germany actually, and also through a little bit through Endekara when he was in Japan as well at the time. So obviously talking a little bit about the scene. So it's a few different things kind of connected, and the booker for Stardom got word of. They were looking to bring in someone with a more legit martial arts style for specifically UWF matches, which is more of a shoot style type of match. And they happened to come across me, and I was brought in, which is also almost didn't happen actually, because I went to the US a couple of months before that. I was supposed to do a week tour, and first match I got my jaw broken. So so I had to travel back, and obviously I had to cancel a lot of my bookings after that, because I mean, some things you can work around. A broken jaw is not one of them. So a startup contacted me as well and said, like, "Are you sure you're actually going to be able to do this? We saw you were injured, so you're canceling bookings. Can we count on you to be here?" And I was like, "Yep, I
Yeah.
will manage. It's not as bad as it as you heard. It's no worries. I'll be there." And just hoping that I would actually heal up nicely. I think I had about 2.5 months between the actual break and my debut in Stardom, which is not really, it's a fine line. You can heal a bone in 2 months usually, but then everything has to be right. But it did work. I was in good shape going to Stardom because I've been living off soup for like 2 months. So, but I know I had one match in Bodyslam actually before heading over. My first match after the injury, did a triple threat. Again, defending the belts, and then I headed off a couple of days later to Japan and did my first match there was a UWF, so it was obviously a bit more hard hitting as well. The jaw held up, and yeah, moved on from there. So I was touring with Stardom for 2 months, and also actually got to be a part of their stable God's Eye for half of that time as well.
Interesting. But if you should take the European style of wrestling, Scandinavian style, and compare it to the Japanese style of wrestling, do you see the similarities and the differences as well?
I'd say the way you tell a story differs a bit in Japan. It is not exactly. I mean, it is not so much about the maybe the heel and face dynamic is a bit more blurry in Japan, I'd say. It is more about the competitors and how they tell their individual stories, regardless of good or bad, which I quite like. And it's also obviously the tempo of things is it's faster, which is also, I mean, I do like the high speed style as well. So but it was also other things that I maybe didn't expect to be such a big deal, but also like the how you use your vocals in Japan throughout the matches is very different as well, and that's something I had to adapt to really quickly, because that was something that made my style that I came in with maybe stand out in not the best of light compared to the other people. So, but that's something you had to pick up quite quickly, which I also think has upped my game a bit coming back actually. Just how you can engage to different things, not just with the moves you do, but also with how you use your entire persona throughout the matches.
But one thing that I was when I was looking at your matches and so on is that you had a name change going from a dragon to a hurricane.
Right. So before I actually got introduced in Stardom, because that happened through a promo, actually before I ever got there. So they sent me an email asking if because they didn't want to use Aliss Ink, and I think that's maybe because it's a bit weird for Japanese people as a name, which is absolutely fine. But they actually asked me in that email, "Do you want to be called the Scandinavian Dragon or the Scandinavian Hurricane?" And I said, "Well, Scandinavian Dragon is I go by that anyway, so that's great. If you want to use that, please do." And then I got introduced as a Scandinavian Hurricane. And I'm still not sure if that was a rib from the booker or if they just had a change of heart, or because I specifically recorded some promos without saying anything, but also other promos very specifically saying Scandinavian Dragon just to get the name across. And obviously they used the ones where I didn't and used Scandinavian Hurricanes. So I was like, okay, I don't mind actually. I think it's quite nice, and I have a lot of my signature combos now as well has weather themes in them. So I kind of taken that a little bit to heart as well.
Interesting. But being at Stardom, and you've wrestled a lot of huge names in the female division in the world, Julia, Megan Bain. How are they as personality? Not only they, but all of the female wrestlers that you met in Stardom.
I mean, I'm gonna say this first. I'm gonna say the quality of the wrestling ability is absolutely outstanding. I mean, even the people that are not names in Japan, such a high quality of their actual work rate. It's crazy. It was really a pleasure stepping into that ring with anyone. So I'll start with saying that. But then also, the backstage was such a nice place to be. Everyone was so accommodating, helpful, really, really nice to be around. I don't think I had anyone that had a crossword with the entire stay. It was everyone just trying to help each other out. Obviously, when you're touring like that as well, you're touring as a group, and it's obviously a different thing to maybe a lot of companies around Europe where you're traveling from different places, and you might not know people. You might also feel a little bit out of your depth, or maybe a little bit. I mean, even competitive towards others. And I felt none of that going into Stardom. What I know now in hindsight, though, obviously the entire company split about 1-2 months after I was there, with the main booker Rossi Ogawa leaving or actually getting fired and then starting his own company. So I mean, obviously there were things going on that I'm sure people were talking about, and there were probably rumors going around that I didn't pick up on. I know very very little Japanese, not enough to hold a complicated conversation. uh, so um, so I'm sure there were things that just went straight over my head, but uh, towards me and everyone I actually had conversations with, and even the people I didn't have conversations with that basically didn't know a word of English, still try to help and was still nice to be around, and so yeah, it was just such a great experience. It was so scary going into it, not knowing if I was actually going to be able to keep up. I'm quite proud of myself for doing a decent job with that.
Amazing. But meeting someone like probably some of your idols or stars that you only watch on TV until then, how did you adapt? Because you always talk about being starstruck or something like that. How did you cope with that thing?
I mean, it's so different seeing someone. I mean, if you watch someone on a screen, and obviously, yes, I watched matches with some of these people before, like a lot of them, uh, and that might be in theory a very scary thing to walk in the same dressing room and like even more going up in the ring with them. Uh, but when you're actually in the situation, I guess this is different for everyone, but I didn't actually the connection between this is the person I was watching and this is the person I have in front of me. It's it didn't actually click for me that way to be starstruck. It was more like, okay, this is a really really cool person that I'm very happy to get to know and to work with and so on. But it's I didn't get the wow, this is an idol. I don't know what to say. I'm I never I didn't get that, and I actually
Oh,
haven't got that I think ever in my life. Which is not saying that I think I'm anything special at all, which I'm not. But I mean, it's I think it's like a disconnect for me somewhere. What happens in a setting when I can watch something on a screen, and then what happens in real life when everyone's just a person. Uh,
exactly.
but I mean, amazing people, but still people.
Yeah, that's one very important thing to take with you on your way back. I think that you have done something that you can manage this type of settings. But then one question that comes into my mind is, will you ever go back to Stardom, or what's left of Stardom and the other promotion? Because that's important to talk about.
I so I mean, if I got a call back from Stardom, I will definitely try to make it work. If I start there, I think since I was there, Stardom has now started working with a lot of the big names in AEW, obviously. Tony Storm going over recently, for example. So I reckon as well with that connection maybe being stronger now than it was then. I don't know how likely it is that they're going to book people from the indie scene. Not saying they won't. And I mean, there might be something I will try to pursue a bit more when I have some other things I want to check out first, but maybe sometime in the future, unless they come in with a curveball before that. I mean, obviously, it would obviously be. I would love to go back to Japan in some aspect in wrestling. If it's going to happen or not, I'm not sure yet. Obviously, the other promotion, Marigold, would also be an option. I mean, I try to. If I know there's animosity between promotions, I usually try to not cross work. But it depends as well if they're actually considering me back or not. If they're not, then obviously I would look at maybe also like what's it called, TGPW, for example, and other promotions as well that do bring over a lot of people. So there's obviously options in Japan as well. It's a big scene and it's a very fun scene to be at. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
But it's also other places. I mean, that I would love to get a shot at and see what I can do with.
So could you tell us a little bit more about what those places are?
I mean, we'll see. Right now, I'd say I'm actually looking a little bit at some places in around the UK that I would love to get a chance at working at, because the UK scene is also obviously a very established scene with a lot of good female wrestlers. I'd say compared to anywhere else in Europe, the female division in the UK is amazing at the quality of just the work rate. So that is something I would like to pursue a bit more because that's also a very interesting style to me. And obviously, Bodyslam bringing over a lot of the UK girls as well has also kind of sparked that because I think there's usually a style that blends quite well with mine. So that's something it's a few like OTT, for example. I would love to do that at some point. Also, obviously, Eve or Progress or like the bigger promotions around the UK. But I'm also going to United in December actually. See what I can do with that because there's, like I said, there's a lot of interesting spots on the UK map that I haven't actually been to yet. So that would be one thing. I'm also obviously looking at different other places as well. I mean, like I said, my US tour did not amount to much with one match and a broken jaw, but I mean, maybe at some point to give that another shot as well. And also, you have some interesting promotions around Mexico as well. Not that I'm a luchador specifically, but it's I'd say the quality of women's matches there is actually looking better and better from what I see. So there's some stuff happening. But then again, I also want to be part of the Scandinavian scene and watch it and help it grow here. So, and as you said, get in more women, which means needs representation to show that, yeah, it's quite possible to do this. It's not going to be easy, but it's possible.
Exactly. So we actually have talked about the Swedish scene and we have talked about the future of Aliss Ink. It's looking quite bright, actually, I think, just to be a little bit of humble Alice. So I think, but your dreams of the future, are your ultimate dream going to WWE, AEW, or what's the
I
ultimate
mean,
dream of Aliss Ink?
I don't know, to be honest, because I've always had the same approach with everything I decided to do in my life. It's never been about where I'm going to go with it. It's about how can I do this to the best of my capacity. So, I mean, like I said, I was looking at Japan quite early on because I thought that was a good benchmark for any wrestler to be able to go there and actually hang with Japanese wrestlers. Sorry. So that was one of the things I was looking at. But it's always been okay. How good can I get at this? That's always been like the ultimate goal. So I haven't been looking at any specific promotion to go. I think also. I'm not going to go into age, but I mean, obviously WWE and maybe to an extent even AEW is not looking for people that is in their adult years. They're looking for younger people just coming out of schools or like different like university athletes, that kind of age group that they can mold into their own products, and that it can have like a longer longevity with. So I think possibly if NXT Europe ever happens and they're looking at local people, that might be an option. But I think it's quite far-fetched to think that I'm going to make it to AW and NXT or WWE as it's looking right now. But things can always change.
Things can go quite fast in pro wrestling.
It definitely can. I mean, I'm not closing any doors. Obviously, this if there's anywhere to be to get your spotlight on you in wrestling, that would obviously be those two promotions. But I wouldn't say I'm not gonna walk out of wrestling feeling unsatisfied just because I don't make that. That is absolutely fine. As long as I can leave on my own terms when I feel like, okay, I took this as far as I can. I've set out to make the scene better, and I set out to make me the best version as a wrestler that I can be. Then I can retire happily. So hopefully, at someday in the far future, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah. Hopefully, you can wrestle for many years to come. So
Exactly. But
yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
you never know with wrestling because things can obviously go fast as well, and
Yeah.
they can with life too. But yeah.
Yeah. But Alice, before we close this interview, I always open the mic for you to say whatever you want to say, do any type of promotions for anything you want. So the mic is yours.
Oof. Uh, right. Oh, that's this could take a while. How long do we have?
You just take your time.
All right. Thank you. No, but I would maybe start with saying that Alice Ink is not something that just one person created, right? It took a lot of people's effort to get me to the point where I am. Obviously, I've done my part, but it's also like everyone that's trained me, everyone that's just been there going through the tough times, because wrestling is not always easy. And I've had points in my wrestling career as well, but I'd like I'm not doing this anymore. I'm done. And then obviously having people around you that care. And I think the Nordic scene is an amazing place for that because people support each other. I've never been in a locker room in the Nordics where I felt like, okay, this is not, people are not caring or people are just out for themselves. It's like I've never experienced that here. I have in other places, but not in the Nordic scene. With that said, if you're interested in actually becoming a wrestler, especially if you're female, please seek out a wrestling school because we need you. We need to make the scene grow. If you're in Stockholm, obviously steel tracks, but also in Copenhagen, you have NEW. In fairly close to Aarhus, I think the Bodyslammers have theirs training school as well. You have other places in Finland as well, and in Norway. It's this is good promotions with good people. So look what's closest to you. Uh, so that maybe that's I would like the scene to in 10 years time, when possibly maybe it's time for me to hang my boots up. I don't wear boots, but it's, as a metaphor. Uh, this scene will have grown, and it will be something that is mainstream for people. That if you go out on a Friday or a Saturday in any of the bigger cities around the Nordics, you might go to a wrestling show just to have a good time and have a laugh. And it's not something that a small niche group of people do, because that's not what wrestling is. Wrestling is really something that can be enjoyable for almost everyone. Um, and I mean, I would like to see that happen because I do care about the scene. Um, if we're gonna get to that in 10 years, I might get there in 5 years. Who knows? But that would be that would be an amazing thing to see happening while I'm still somewhat within the business. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people has been there for me, and they will be there for the next generation as well, and so will I. And that's how wrestling is supposed to be. Uh, I mean, if you want to look into your local scenes, go support your local shows. If you're interested in wrestling, go watch the show. Find out there's going to be something fairly close to you, almost wherever you are in Scandinavia. You just have to look for it a little bit. So that's also something that you can do specifically, and follow your favorite wrestlers on social media, not just the big names, also the people local to you.
So, Alice, now you're talking about social media. Where can people find you on the internet?
Oh, I mean, I'm quite lazy with social media. I'm not gonna lie.
Okay.
But I'm I'm mostly on Instagram, and you can find me at Aliss Ink, ALISS underscore INK, and then underscore. But I also have I'm also available on Facebook and I want to say Twitter, but I suppose to say X, I think
Yeah, you
nowadays.
have to.
But I'm not super active on those though. But sometimes it comes up an update, so you can also follow me there, of course. And
But
there's
we'll
loads of content on YouTube. Go
yeah,
search for Aliss Ink, find matches. There's so much stuff out there, not just from me, from anyone. Search for your favorite promotion. You're gonna find a lot of free stuff to watch. That'll hopefully get you interested for the next show.
of course, we hope so. I think this has been a good way to promote wrestling to have more female wrestlers coming in, hopefully in the future. So, but Alice, thank you so much for your time. It's been an honor and a pleasure for me to talk with you. And hopefully it will not be the last time, because I think we're just only scratched some of the surface of who Aliss Ink is. And hopefully in a few years, we'll take the next interview talking about your development and looking back at this interview coming. So
That would be amazing. Looking forward
yeah,
to it. And I'll
yeah.
probably see you before then. So
I think so. Actually, I think so. We will see.
I
We will
reckon
see
around a
soon.
certain super show in February, if nothing else.
I could reckon that. I might show up. Who knows?
Who knows? I mean, it's just the biggest wrestling event in, Scandinavian
Yeah,
history. So
yeah, yeah. Actually, so. But again, thank you so much, Alice. And one thing
thank
that
you as
I
well.
think we two agree on, that people have to watch a lot of female wrestling, female wrestlers, women's wrestling's division. It's a growing scene. There's lots more focus on it. And on YouTube, they're the most popular videos in many places. So
Exactly
and
that. And it's like,
yeah,
and it's come such a long way from being something maybe just 20 years ago that it was a joke, right? Female wrestling was models trying to like emulate being somewhat of a wrestler. And now it's actually athletes doing really, really cool and hard stuff. Um, so yeah, scene is growing and the stories are getting better as well. It's so much happening with women's wrestling right now. So being a part of that as well is super cool. And we can see that in the US, we can see that in the UK as well, to some extent. Obviously, Japan always had great female wrestling, so they kind of the exception to everything else. But I mean, I would love to see that happen in Europe as well. But that become just the same quality and the same anticipation for the women's matches as it is for some of the men's matches. Not just on YouTube, also at the shows.
yes, because and that you just gave me the possibility to end this off, because one thing that we're saying always when we end an interview or an episode, remember out there, you have to watch wrestling live.
Yes, everything's better live with wrestling.